I look at what's in front of me, don't focus on the other things. I know that if I'm struggling, that only leads to a tougher me.
Hello everybody, welcome to KC Oasis this morning. It's great to see you. Yay! Yeah. My name is Genevieve and I'm going to be emceeing today. We have a fabulous program for you. Okay, first we're going to talk about our core values though, right? These are, people are more important than beliefs. Reality is known through reason. Human hands solve human problems. Meaning comes from making a difference, and be accepting and be accepted. And to find out more, you can always go to kcoasis.org/our-philosophy. For today's program, it's going to be fabulous. We have our featured speaker today, Dr. Darrel Ray. Yes. And he will be telling us about religious trauma and your brain, which I know will be super fascinating for us. We always learn a ton from seeing Dr. Darrel Ray. And today we also have as a musical guest, Jack Summers, and he will be playing soon for us. Yeah, hold on 1 second. Yeah, okay. So let's learn a little bit about Jack before we get started. So his Instagram is at Jack Summers Music. You can find him at jacksummersmusic.com and Spotify as well. So Jack's music is story-centric, Americana that covers everything from the death of a West Virginia coal town to the death of the American Mall. Oh, lots of death. Okay. So he works at Art as Mentorship, a nonprofit that runs free songwriting camps for kids with a focus on mental health and community building. Oh my gosh, I want to join too. Okay, and also songwriting, he's the songwriting contest winner at Walnut Valley Festival and Careville Folk Festival. Okay, great. So, Jack, can you come on up and play some for us?
Good morning. I haven't played this song in a while, but it felt appropriate given the space and the topic. So I'll leave it there. I usually ramble too long, so I'll just leave it. Patron saints all stayed up late, turning worries into wine, drafting their new scripts for fate in light of modern times. Some called for revolution, and others they declined, 'cause maybe the solution is to leave it all behind. Saint Isidore, he took the floor with wisdom and with grace. Said it's truth that they've been searching for, but it's all been laid to waste. From Hudson Bay to Santa Fe, and places in between, they all just scroll their lives away and don't ask what it means. And if I ever were to pray, could I find the words to say? Make it through their judgment day. 'Cause it's not black and white, it's gray. Saint Gertrude, she just had to laugh. Truth left us long ago. And now we live in aftermath in a world where no one knows if life is fact or fiction, if true gospel can be told. You decipher the encryption and they call it fool's gold. So just ask Galileo, we burnt his effigy. We're all the folks in concrete walls who should be walking free. 'Cause every day it changes, we all just try our best. When you think you found the answer, they just hand you a new test. And if I ever were to pray, could I find the words to say to make it through their judgment day? 'Cause it's not black and white, it's gray. It's gray. The martyrs reached a fever pitch. Enter then St. Jude, who as if he had flipped a switch, quieted the room. All life is contradiction. There are no rules or laws, and any quest to understand only stands as a lost cause. So if you want to save the world, I'll leave that up to you. 'Cause every person here on earth is an arbiter of truth. And should you somehow find a way to broker peace for all, I'll just sit back and wait a while, 'cause soon too it will fall. Thank you very much. So I don't play that song very often. One, because it's in a different tuning than I usually play in, and I'm you know, lazy. But two, you know, there's a part of me that thinks it could say something a little bit better. So if you have any thoughts on how I could say that a little bit better, let me know, and maybe I'll figure it out today. I'm always open to getting better. But while I'm in a different tuning, I will play a song I just wrote. And if you want to hear a new song from me every month, you can join my mailing list, which is on my website. And maybe next month you can wake up on the first of the month and have a really sad song in your inbox. I'm gonna get it a little bit better. Thank you so much for bearing with me. At 4 o'clock I found the freeway, and you found a note on the fridge. My last welfare check's coming Wednesday, and your mother can help with the kids. Now maybe I'm wrong, but there's no use debating. There's nothing worth saving right now. Found a vodka and tonic just north of New Haven, and I won't be putting it down. I won't be putting it down. You were the one who brought me home, but it's better now if I just go. I'm not on the run, I'm just on my own. You were the best love that I could have known. And trust me when I say, if sorry could be any use, I'd say it to you. Now the night's turning black like obsidian, still the riddling strings me along. And I'm lost at the thought of your voice again. Oh, Kathy, you did nothing wrong. Now I'm too drunk to drive, but the highway is empty. It's tempting to follow its call. I could find 55 and head west to Poughkeepsie and forget the pain of it all. Forget the pain of it all. You were the one who brought me home. But it's better now if I just go. I'm not on the run, I'm just on my own. You were the best love that I could have known. And trust me when I say, if sorry could be any use, I'd say it to you. I'd say it. Kathy, there's lights in the distance. They flash like a penny arcade. I follow them lonesome and listless to hide from the messes I made. But years down the line, when you're forced to remember the embers of bridges I burned, I hope you think back on that night last September when you thought our love had returned. You thought our love had returned. You were the one who brought me home. But it's better now if I just go. I'm not on the run, I'm just on my own. You were the best love that I could have known. And trust me when I say, if sorry could be any use, I'd say it to you. Now the night's turning black like obsidian. Still the riddling strings me along. Thank you very much. I'll play something happier when I come back, I promise.
Either way, your just lyrics are so much fun to listen to. I can't wait for the next line. Yeah, no, it's fabulous. Yeah, thank you so much, Jack. Okay, let's see. Yeah. So also, if you're interested, we have a KC Oasis newsletter that comes out weekly. If you need to sign up to see what we've been up to or what's planned for the future, go ahead and check out this at kcoasis.org and sign up so that you know what we're up to each week. Okay, and then also, community moments. Let's talk about that. Today we're not going to have a community moment, but usually we do. It's about a 10-minute presentation that anyone in our community can come up and talk about any topic. We don't mind. We love learning about everything that you may know. It could be about professions, hobbies, travel experiences, volunteer experiences, whatever you'd love to teach us about, we want to know. So if you're interested, you can sign up on the Sign Up Genius, but start here. You can just, go to get involved and to the drop-down menu with Community Moment. I know there are some people out there that I've already talked to, like my daughter, who has plenty to tell us about a lot of interesting topics, so I'll make sure to bug them, that's for sure. So maybe you've got something else to talk about too. We'd love to hear it. Next, we're going to be talking, or Dr. Darrel Ray will be talking to us about religious trauma and your brain. So Darrel will discuss 3 ways religion impacts us, 2 of which you have probably never considered or heard about. You will learn about the disgust and attachment systems, as well as the limbic system, all combined to make it difficult to leave most religions. And then afterwards, Darrel will have a book signing too. So we're going to split it into 2 parts. Darrel will come up in a minute. Okay, sorry. I will start there. But before I have you come up, Darrel, I was considering today and like the times that you've come in the past and the way that we've learned, right? And the one takeaway, and it's simple in its thinking, but I always feel more human and like accepting of that, right? And so I know it's kind of simple in that thinking if I feel more human when I learn from you, but that's a good thing, yeah? So if we could all have a big round of applause for Darrel to come up and speak. Yes.
Now I'm on. I'm all turned on. Oh, I didn't mean it that way, of course. Of course I did. But that's not the main purpose of my talk. I know you'll all be surprised today that I'm not talking about sex, but it will come in. I'll just guarantee you that. Well, thanks for coming today. I have been looking forward to doing this talk for quite a while. This is actually the first time I've given this talk. And so we're going to get exposed to some new material. There's new shit here I have never talked about before, but I think is important. If you were able to see that little totally unscientific survey that I put up there, yeah, there we go. If somebody has a copy in your row, just pass it around. It's just a mental warm-up for what I'm going to be talking about. And if you mentally scored 25 or 30 points on that little scale of 1 to 10 survey, you're probably going to be interested in what I got to say. And if you scored a bunch of zeros, you still might be interested because your mother or your cousin or your kids, somebody in your family will relate to what we're going to talk about. So let me be clear. I'm a psychologist, but I am not here to diagnose anybody. That's not my purpose. I'm here to simply raise awareness and get you thinking. Maybe you behave in a certain way, or people have told you you do certain things and you don't understand why you do it, or you see other people behaving in certain ways that seem confusing to you. This may give you some ideas about what the roots of that behavior might be. So my 3 objectives is to talk about what is trauma today. I want to explore the 3 ways that religion infects our brain. And finally, I want to discuss real briefly some ways of mitigating the problems that religion has caused us if we were raised in especially a high control religion. So religion impacts our brains whether you know it or not. If you were raised in a religion, your brain was impacted. There's no doubt about it. How many of you were raised in some kind of purity culture? Okay, look around. See all the hands up there? Probably at least 40% of the people or more. That messes with your brain because it interferes with your normal sexual development as a human being. Shame. If you've had a shame response to something, I would be totally blown away with shame if somebody knew I thought or did or X, Y, or Z did these things. That's a religious shame response, and that's programmed into your brain, and it probably has neural pathways, literally neural pathways that are strongly developed in you. And so when you have that response, it's almost involuntarily. It feels almost like a reflex, but it's not. It was learned. It was learned somewhere and was programmed into your developing brain as a child. Self-soothing behaviors like praying, the need to pray. I've had a lot of people say, I've been out of church for 20 years, I still feel like praying sometimes. Well, where does that come from? That's a program, and it's in your brain, and it's a strongly programmed neural pathways. And sometimes people even wake up after 10 years of being away from the church and say, I still wake up with panic attacks, thinking about hell. Again, those are all ways that your brain has been impacted. Now let's get into some basic developmental psychology briefly so we can understand where I'm going to go today. And that is that the human brain is developing throughout your early childhood up until probably as high as 24 years old, 25-year-olds for men, 22-year-olds for women. Our brains are still developing. And through that time period, our brains are going through phases where different things are important to your brain. And your brain is able to absorb that whatever that important thing is at that moment. I mean, very few 2-year-olds are worried about calculus. So at 25 years old, maybe you'd be worried about calculus. Your brain is ready for it, but your brain is not ready at 2 years old. And so we've got really good data. It's going back 70, 80, 90 years. Shows us what the human brain is doing at any given time, or any given time frame, not an exact time. And this just kind of illustrates what that is. For example, facial recognition. We know that the infant human comes out of the womb able to recognize the human face. No dog, no child, no infant ever mistakes the family dog for its mother. It just doesn't happen, right? Because we have already been programmed within our brain to recognize the shape of the human face. Now that baby can't recognize any given face, it just recognizes the face. 6 weeks later, it's starting to recognize mom's face. 6 weeks after that, it's able to not just recognize mom's face, but female faces and mom's face in particular. So the brain is open at that point in time to that particular task. The brain has a task to do, and that is find out who my caregiver is, find out where the safety is, and where the milk is going to come from, and that locks into the brain. It's a really important time for infants, having that security and safety of having someone to lock in on. And facial recognition is a really big part of that. And some people lose that or miss that point in time. For example, a child who was taken away from their caregiver early on in life may have difficulties in some areas related to facial recognition or other things related to building bond in a relationship. Because in this case, facial recognition also impacts the ability to attach, to have a close relationship with the caregiver. Language acquisition. Anybody tried learning a new language when you're 22 or 25? How successful were you? Yeah, I see a lot of this. I was 19 going to college, and I took 2 years of French. At the end of a whole 2 back off. Okay, maybe we should go on to, I can do this. So if you tried learning a language when you're older, my French teacher had me for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, he said, Darrel, I'm going to give you a B if you promise never to take another French class. And I agreed. I did not want to hurt my GPA. It's really hard to learn for most people. Some people just seem to have a knack for it. And women seem to be better at language acquisition later in life than men are, but all of us seem to have more trouble. You don't just walk in and start learning new languages when you're past a certain age. And that window, it's a window of opportunity that opens up and stays open until you're about 7 or 8 or 9 years old. And then it starts closing. And by 12 years old, it's harder. By 20 years, it's almost impossible for some people to learn a new language. So there is rock hard proof that the brain opened a window, or had a window open, and then that window closed. So we've seen it true for facial recognition. We see it true for language. Social skills, the same thing. Some people miss the opportunity. I'm thinking, I see a lot of people come into recovery from religion from a homeschooled environment, and they have incredibly social skill disability, if you will. They never had the opportunity to interact with other human beings in complex social environments because they were homeschooled. And so they still struggle at 20, 30, 40 years old with social skills. Just how do I navigate the complex social environment that we live in? And last, and something I'll spend most of my time at the end of my talk talking about, and that is attachment. There are windows of opportunity when the child attaches. And if once it attaches, then it's got a caregiver, it feels secure. Other aspects of the personality can then develop securely and safely in that child's life. So the issue I want to just highlight here is there's windows that open and there's windows that close within our brains. Now let's go on to talk about what trauma is. And I'll just read this to us. Trauma results from an event, series of events or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and physical, social, and emotional well-being over a long term, maybe even a lifetime. This is not just, I hear people joking about, that traumatized me, or X, Y, or Z stuff traumatized me. We're joking, we're just having fun with it. But true trauma is pretty devastating, and it lasts a long time. And it's hard to get over for many people. It may be something that really requires a lot of external help with a therapist. So people go through developmental stages as trauma is happening to them. So what we know is that trauma, the brain is affected by a trauma, but the kind of trauma can be directly related to what stage the brain is in when the trauma happens. Think about that. Trauma of a child going through a war zone like Ukraine right now at 5 years old might be a different trauma than that same person going through the war in Ukraine at 20 years old. Loss of a parent to a 5-year-old could be devastating. Loss of a parent to a 30-year-old is something we would consider normal. Parents are going to die sooner or later. And so we can see that is the trauma of whatever that event is could be devastating at one age and then not a big deal. Not that somebody's parent dying is not a big deal, but it wouldn't be traumatic. It wouldn't have long-lasting, lifelong effects. So Harry Harlow did some very unethical experiments back in the 60s. Some of you may remember the Harry Harlow monkey experiments. If you took Psychology 101, you probably remember those, where they took baby monkeys away from their mothers, put them in a cage with a wire monkey, and maybe with a fur-lined wire monkey with a nipple, and then they just observed what the baby did. And the baby, of course, was more likely to go to the mother that had fur on it, but it still needed nourishment, so it would go over to the wire mother with milk and a nipple, and then go back to the mother with wire mother with fur on it. And they also noticed that no matter what situation they were in, the baby still had social deficits and behavioral difficulties, because the time for attachment and secure attachment to the mother was past. There was no mother in that. There was no mother to hold it, cuddle it, hear its heartbeat, feel its breathing. Those things were not happening to that child at that time, that baby monkey. Remember, they're primates just like us, and most primates, in fact, probably all of the higher primates, go through the same developmental cycles in their brain and development that we do. There was also a horrible, horrible natural experiment, the Romanian orphanage experiment. I don't know if some of us are old enough to remember this. George and I are old enough to remember it, right? The Ceausescu dictatorship in Romania, where they were just simply taking kids for whatever reason out into orphanages. Parents couldn't take care of them, so they got stuck in an orphanage. And they had a philosophy that children don't need care, all they need is food. So children did not get hugged and held, sang to, cuddled, talked to. They didn't get those. And so you get an entire generation of children growing up in Romania with that neglect. I mean, we would call it severe neglect. And it had lifelong behavioral repercussions for those children. To this day, there's been a number of studies on the Romanian orphanage children, if you will. And so we've got some pretty good documentation that if you do certain things to a child at a certain age, it can have lifelong ramifications for that child. Same thing is true of caregiver absence. My parents for 20 years were foster parents. They had over 200 children in my home. So I'm competing with 200 other children for the attention of my parents. Yeah, that wasn't a fun piece. But thankfully, was already in college by the time they really got started. And I saw the behavioral deficits of these children. Now, I wasn't a psychologist. I didn't have the training. I hadn't even had Psychology 101 at the time. But I could see something was missing here. And it was missing in almost all of these children. So I've seen it firsthand, very up close. And then I've worked, of course, in the area of clinical psychology off and on for much of my career. Now, I've given you all these horrible examples here, of course, but there are mitigating circumstances. If a child is from a home that has a a very caring caregiver, or they have sufficient resources to provide therapy for a child, or something like that, that may mitigate the trauma so that it doesn't become a trauma, or it's only short term. It's not a long-term issue. So I'm not here to say that everybody who's gone through some of these things is permanently damaged. That is not what I'm saying, because there are mitigating things. Things can help a child or a human get through these things and get to the other side. But trauma, if it does take effect, creates distortion in the way we view the world. It distorts our ability to perceive accurately what is going on around us. This is a tree. Some of you have been at my house, and I've got a lot of forest around my house. That tree years ago had another tree fall on top of it, and by the time I noticed it and got out and took the other tree off of it, it had already been distorted. The tree had been knocked down, and then it grew back up to get to the sunlight. That tree will be shaped like that for the rest of its life. The tree is distorted. That's what trauma does to our brains. It can distort our brains. And if the window opens, and during that window you get a certain kind of trauma, that can make our brains less able to properly perceive the world from what was going on at that developmental phase. It may affect the bond that you had with your caregivers. Whatever the trauma was may affect the bond with your caregiver, and it may affect your ability to trust other people. Throughout your life, you may really have difficulty trusting, or you may trust the wrong people. And it can go both ways. And there's no way to predict how this is going to come out in any given child or a person as they become an adult. It can really make it hard for you to make decisions if you have difficulty, because oftentimes we have difficulty making decisions because we're afraid of the conflict that might come out of that particular decision. That could be directly related to some earlier childhood experience or trauma. It may cause you never to develop a sense of agency. You're always taking your cues from other people. You don't really know who you are or how you want to move through your environment. You may develop some real fear of conflict. I think one of the root causes of early childhood religious trauma is conflict avoidance. Christianity is full of conflict avoidance. There's nobody teaching you a course on conflict management in any Sunday school class I ever went to. But there's a lot of people that avoid conflict, and that's why you go down the basement, you listen to everybody gossiping about each other. I mean, that's where I learned what Christians really do. They gossip about each other, and they usually do it in the kitchen, in the basement. My mother was a beautician, and she had a beauty shop right in our home. And all the women of the church came to my mother's beauty shop. And as a result of that, we could sit outside real quietly and listen to all the gossip that was going on. We could learn out which elder was screwing which elder's wife, or what the minister spent his paycheck on this year, whether it was a good new car or not. It was really an interesting education to listen to all the people gossiping about each other. Last in this list here is extreme need to please. I see a lot of that coming out of religiously indoctrinated people. Because remember, Jesus said, you're last. You got to put everybody else before you. And so you have to make sure you please everyone else. Now here's an interesting thing to note. Adrenaline has a strong effect on our ability to perceive our world. Normally, you're sitting right here, you have pretty good peripheral vision. I would ask you to take your hands and wiggle your fingers like this, and just keep going back and look straight forward, keep going back until you cannot see your fingers anymore. So you probably got peripheral vision of 170 degrees, maybe 180, but it's pretty good. Humans have very good peripheral vision. Now, the minute something comes and threatens you and your adrenaline comes up, your peripheral vision will shrink down, and shrinks down to a very small, narrow area, kind of like here in this illustration. You literally cannot see certain parts of the world because your brain is now being forced to only look at a small area of your environment. That's a survival mechanism, of course, is once your peripheral vision sees the lion, from over here, your peripheral vision goes over here and focuses on that. You're not going to worry about what's going on over here because you got the imminent danger here. Well, there's no lions around here anymore, or at least I haven't seen any, but that is what's going on in your brain anyway. When you perceive some danger, your peripheral visions can limit. Have you ever gotten into an argument with a religious person about their religion? Have you ever noticed they seem to lose all perspective? Their peripheral vision goes away. All they can see is what's right in front of them. And it's literally an intellectual narrowing of their ability to perceive what's the logic. Logic no longer is important. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I do want to highlight that adverse childhood experiences are key to trauma that may last us for a lifetime. And there's actually, you can go online and look at a Center for Disease Control has a really simple 9 or 10 item questionnaire, and you can take it, and it'll give you some hints about where you might have had any childhood experience that could have been traumatizing to you. And from the British Royal Academy, a very, I thought, interesting comment by one of their top scientists in childhood development. He says, the link between childhood adversity and mental illness is as strong as the link between smoking and cancer. Now, we've got, the test that I mentioned to you at the CDC is highly validated across a wide range of people and cultures. So it's worth looking at, because what I'm going to tell you today is not a way to diagnose, but that test, that little survey, might help you identify some areas that you might want to work on, or at least acknowledge that you had some issues. Let me give you an example. As you all know, I've started Recover from Religion, and we've got all sorts of people calling us literally every hour of every day. And they're telling us all sorts of things. And as I listen to what they say or watch what they write to us, I think, wow, there's some trauma right there. I'll give you an example here. This person wrote to us in a chat. I feel like I lived under a rock my whole life. Homeschool, purity culture, church 5 times a week, mission work, only reading approved books, Christian radio, and so much more. Leaving the church was like being born again. How many of you thought you were born again once you got away from the religion? It's the truth. I did too. I thought, wow, this is freeing. I was like a baby in an adult body. I had no idea how to relate to normal people. I certainly did not have a clue how to date or even about sex. Where does one even begin after indoctrination? I've been out for 4 years now, and I'm still trying to figure things out. It's like trying to learn a whole new language as an adult. I see a bunch of heads nodding. When did you get exposed to that religious ideology? Mostly when you were a young child. When were you learning a language? Same time. The brain is opened up, and you're learning a language, but you're also learning the language of a religion, whether it's Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Scientology, it doesn't matter. That's when religion wants to get you, because your brain's window is open to that very thing. And I doubt if any of you woke up one morning at 5 years old and say, hey, Mom, Dad, why aren't you teaching me Chinese? It doesn't occur to a 5-year-old. And you didn't wake up and say, hey, Mom, Dad, why aren't you teaching me Buddhism or Islam? That doesn't occur. You just absorb whatever is right there in your environment. Therein lies a really important component of why it's so hard to leave many religions, because they got you before your brain was fully developed. The neural pathways are now solidly developed to do the things that particular religion told you to do. I doubt if any Baptist in here misses getting on the floor prayer mat and doing prayers 5 times a day. But if you're an ex-Muslim, you probably still have the inclination to want to get on a mat and pray 5 times a day, because that was the neural pathway that was developed in you. Whatever those habits and patterns are very powerful, and they stick with us for a long, long time. But, and here's the rub. I hear people talk a lot about trauma in the scientific literature. I hear them talking about trauma in all sorts of other places, but rarely, if ever, do they talk about religion's input to that same trauma. much of the trauma I see that people experience has at least a religious component to. Not all of it by a long shot, but a lot does. And nobody's talking about it because they're afraid to. And that's why I want to give these talks and why I push it so hard around the country as I'm talking to people. Religion has a direct impact on our brains. Now, what happens if the caregiver is the source of the pain? Here's what Dr. Van der Kolk has said. Some of you may have read his book, The Body Keeps the Score. Anybody read that book? Okay, cool. A few people read that book. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. But here's what he says. If your caregiver is the source of pain and blame you for what's going on, then you blame yourself. The issue of self-blame is almost universal in chronic trauma and is pervasive in psychiatric practice because so many people are traumatized and have had childhood trauma experiences. My one criticism of Van der Kolk is that he not once mentions religion in the whole book. Never once says, could religion be a component of this trauma that I'm talking about? And I think that in itself is a testament to how scared the psychological and psychiatric community are of implicating religion in the thing we're talking about today. So I'm going to suggest that religious trauma oftentimes comes from our caregivers. From the very person you should be able to trust most is the person who's causing you the most pain. There is no escape if you're a child in a high-control religious family environment. Just going home can be dangerous. You go home, you're going to get spanked because you didn't learn your Bible lesson at the home, in your homeschooling or in your religious school that you went to. Caregiver may frequently reject you, isolate you, shun you because you asked the wrong question in Sunday school. My mother, fortunately, I didn't live in that environment. I was not traumatized, I don't think, in my religious environment. But I did get questioned when I came home from Sunday school more than once about, Darrel, why are you asking those questions in Sunday school? So anybody else had that problem? Okay, well, I wasn't as smart as some of you. Some of you got out a long time. It took me a lot more years to get out. But even in 12, 13 years old, I was asking the wrong questions, and I found out it was wrong. What about a gay child growing up in that kind of environment? And they're being taught, they don't know they're gay maybe yet, but they're being taught how horrible it is to be non-binary or LGBTQ or whatever. So they're caught in a trap. They don't know who they are or what they are yet, but they still feel the shame that's being imposed on them. And then as they grow older and they become more aware of who they are, they start internalizing that shame. And it becomes very difficult for them to separate themselves from that. So I'd like you to think about this, pencil, pen, or just do it in your brain. I'm going to talk about several things in these next few slides. See which things I'm going to talk about here that apply directly to you. Religious sexual abuse, religious emotional abuse, oftentimes in the form of doctrine of hell or Armageddon, or religious sanctions, rejection, social isolation, shunning, disfellowshipping. Anybody been disfellowshipped or shunned in here by their own family? Okay, at least a half a dozen people have been shunned or disfellowshipped. That's pretty traumatic because that's your caregivers saying they don't want to see you again. They don't want to talk to you. That is a deep, deep thing because that program happened at 1 year old, at 6 months old. It's really hard to undo something like that and to be rejected by that caregiver that should be protecting you and now has become part of a hostile environment. Physical threats, danger of arbitrary punishment. I mean, children at 4 or 5 years old don't understand why they're being punished, especially when that punishment is coming from some abstract religious concept about Jesus died for your sins, so I'm going to spank the hell out of you until you agree with me. No escape from parental threats, indoctrination, all that stuff. There's no escape. And that's the underlying piece I want to emphasize. There is no escape for a child raised in a trauma-inducing environment. For most of us, I'm guessing many of us, we had a warm, loving family that if we experienced something really bad, we could always come, tell our mom or our dad, and we get a hug, and we could feel safe again. For many children raised in high-control religious environments, that's not the case. There is no place to get a hug. Just think about it. There's no place for a 5-year-old to get a hug. That's devastating. I could always count on my parents for a hug. Even when they were pissed off at me or mad at me, I knew they still loved me because I could get a hug from them. Social isolation, I've mentioned that earlier, is really common among homeschooled children. So you see the social isolation, that leads to social awkwardness. So many people tell me I felt like I wasn't even educated. I don't know what I got, but as a homeschooler, I got out and found out I didn't know anything. And yet my parents thought they were doing the best for me. And of course, here's some things I want you to consider if this is true for you. Why do I still have this nagging fear of hell years after I left religion? Why do I still feel guilty about my sexual thoughts, even though I know they're perfectly normal? Why do I feel shame for masturbating when I know it's natural and something most humans do? Why do I get so upset when my mother says she's praying for me? In this season, this is a good time to think about that. Why are you getting so upset when you have to go back to your home and for Christmas and you got to deal with all the praying and Jesus loves me and carols and shit like that? Why do you apologize so quickly when you didn't do anything wrong? Think about that. Anybody have that problem? I apologize, I did the damn thing, and yet I'm sitting here saying I'm sorry. No. That's probably religiously involved because it comes in the form of needing to please and conflict avoidance. You do not want to create conflict. Why is it so hard or even impossible for me to tell my partner what I like in sex? Am I ashamed of my body? Am I ashamed of that interaction? Why am I always second-guessing myself? Why do I have so much difficulty making decisions? I know a lot of people out of religious environments that cannot make a decision, or they're always second-guessing themselves after they do, which think how much energy you're wasting in your life if you never think you made the right decision, and you're taking all that energy to second-guess yourself. And last, why am I so afraid of conflict? Let me give you an example. I had years of religious training, sermons, youth camps, teaching the evils of sex, my body, being responsible for men's lust, and so much more. I got married to the first man that showed an interest in me, so I wouldn't be tempted to sin. After marriage, our sex life was a disaster. I don't know how we managed to have 2 kids. I don't blame him, but our marriage should never have happened. Even today, I have desire and sexual urges, but I get paralyzed at the thought of having sex. I haven't even tried to date a man since my divorce 8 years ago, even though I would really like to have a life partner. This is a 34-year-old woman that chatted in with us. Do you think there might be some trauma there? I can't diagnose from a single thing, but that sure looks like somebody whose entire sexual development was disrupted and disoriented by purity culture training. Do you have a deep sense of defectiveness or even self-loathing? Some people do, raised in those environments. Body shame, never feeling safe in your own body. Constant alertness to other people's emotions and responses. Other people are what matters. And so I have to respond to what they think and they do. I have to read their mind. And all that comes in the form of how do I stay safe in an environment when other people's emotions impinge upon my own and I have no boundaries. Extreme needs to please. I mentioned that before. Here's some other things that people oftentimes report. I am worthless. I can't do anything without God. I'm third. I should always consider others before myself. Joy. I wasn't raised with this, but some of my Baptist friends. Anybody a Baptist in here? Any Baptists? Oh, not too many. Okay, well, you were probably raised with the joy thing. Jesus, others, you. Yeah, you're a third. I'm third. You've heard that bullshit? Okay. My body is my enemy. That's a big lesson from Christianity. My very body is the enemy. Look, just read Paul. Just read any of Paul's letters. He's full of that stuff. And my thoughts about sex and sexuality are Satan whispering to me. Satan's whispering. So a lot of people say they totally lose touch with their body, totally lose touch with their emotions. It's like I'm living in another person. It's not my body. I feel like I have no control over the responses that my body has. I have involuntary shame responses, for example, when somebody talks about something that evokes that in me. I always feel that I need to take care of others. I'm insecure and I'm unsure if they're happy or not. I have to make sure other people are happy. I can't enjoy myself with somebody else, and I can't enjoy myself with myself sexually. Sometimes my emotions just seem to come from nowhere. If any of these might describe you, then we might have some things to think about with respect to your religious upbringing. I see lots of patterns of behavior. The fear of conflict I've mentioned several times. Perfectionism. I see a lot of perfectionists among formerly high-control religious people. They just can't let good enough alone. 80% is never good enough. It's got to be 100%, and they never get to 100%, so they're always miserable. And they can't get things done oftentimes. A lot of perfectionists also procrastinate a lot, because if I can't do it perfect, then why should I start? And, you get into that cycle. I can't get my homework done because I can't do it perfectly. I don't want to start something I can't do perfectly. Does anybody this sound interesting or informative to anybody? I see a couple of heads nodding. We have a few perfectionists in here, I'm guessing. Terrified or repulsed by sex or sexuality and sexual dysfunction, unable to develop healthy sexual relationships. And last, and pretty rare, but still happens, and that's scrupulosity. You've heard of people that have OCD and so severely that they have to wash their hands 72 times or things like that. Well, some people have religious OCD, and we call it scrupulosity, and that's when the person has to say 72 prayers before they go out. Or they have to have a rosary in just exactly the right spot to protect them from the evils that are always around them. Those are people with real serious OCD, but it's attached to religion. And many, many people have small pieces of that. Oftentimes we take with us after childhood. So the brain holds a map of how the world works, and we get all sorts of religious messages at various times. Very few religions that I'm aware of tell you about how horrible hell is when you're 3 and 4 years old in Sunday school class. What do they teach in there? What do they teach to 5-year-olds? Gnashing of teeth. Yeah, they taught you that at 5? Oh my gosh, what religion was that? What? Baptist. Oh yeah, Baptists can do that. Most Baptists don't, but most of them are saying Jesus loves the little children, aren't they? They're saying how wonderful and nice and loving Jesus is. That's what you teach a 5-year-old. But when a child gets to be 12-year-olds, you have to start teaching them how evil their body is. So 12-year-old Sunday school lessons are more towards your body is evil. So getting you ready for the purity culture shit that they're going to teach you. And of course, at 16, you have to teach them that your sex drive is directly from Satan. That's who's talking to you. And you notice that each of these lessons, and this is roughly the way most religions, evidently yours wasn't, but most religions use this sequence. Nobody tells us 5-year-old that Satan, your sex drive, is coming from Satan. Nobody does that because it's not appropriate and the brain's not ready for that. What religion has done is it's figured out where are the proper places in the brain to jump in, and then it does it. A lot of this I'm talking about interferes with our ability to socialize, to problem solve, to think critically, and to deal with stress of new environments. So it keeps you isolated and within whatever religion you were raised in. So how does religion affect the brain? Specifically, I'm going to be talking about that for the rest of our time here. First of all, there's 3 different components. There's more, but these 3 are really important, and I don't think many people are talking about them. First is the limbic system. Limbic system. Second, disgust and the insula. And third, our attachment system. I've mentioned some of these already. But the first is limbic. Fight, freeze, flag, fawn, whatever the 5, some have different words for it. But this is the part of the brain that is involved in the limbic system. It's the part that keeps us safe. It makes sure we're alert to our environment and any dangers that are in the environment. So it's a healthy thing. But religion comes along and fear trains us. It creates neural pathways that are based on supernatural ideas. So imagine that we're just sitting here and I'm talking and a lion comes walking right down by Fred. How would you respond? Where's the exits, right? your limbic system would respond to that really, really quickly. Now, what happens if I'm a Baptist minister and I'm up here saying, Satan is about to get you if you don't repent right now? Give me your money. What that does, especially for a child that's been programmed into that particular religion, I mean, a Scientologist wouldn't respond to that. Only the Baptists or the Pentecostals, they respond to it because their brain, especially their limbic system, has been trained to respond to that kind of message. And if you could look inside that brain, you would see a pattern of response that looks exactly like the lion walking down the aisle here next to Fred. The limbic system wants to keep you safe. But what religion does is it teaches you to be afraid of supernatural things. What if you are taught to be afraid of Satan, afraid of demons, afraid of ghosts? Every time that fear stimulus comes up, your brain is responding just like it would to a real physical threat. So that leads to inappropriate responses to the environment that we're in. But remember, your limbic system is trying to protect you, but it's trying to protect you from supernatural ideas. God loves you, but he's going to send you to hell. So we need to be afraid of that and do what the religion tells us to do. There is a recent study, just literally came out this year, that found, and I can give you the citation, but I didn't put it up here, that it's easier to leave God than it is to leave Satan. People will come and report to us. I've been seeing this for years. I didn't know there was a study until just the year. People reported in this that they were able to leave God, leave religion, all that stuff pretty easily a long time ago. But they still have elements of that religion in them, generally in the form of what's stimulating the limbic system. Fear of hell, Satan, demons, ghosts. I see atheists that still believe in ghosts, thinking that doesn't quite compute here, but okay, how's that work? Well, it works because of the limbic system. That's all it is. The limbic system was taught to be afraid and afraid of supernatural things. When you're 5 years old, you don't know the difference between your parents say, don't go over there because the hyenas or the dogs or the lions might eat you, and don't go over there because the demons will get you. Your 5-year-old brain cannot distinguish the difference. And once it's programmed, it's probably programmed to some degree for the rest of your life. So religion has a real impact on our limbic system, and that includes fear of hell, fear of your own body, fear of sexual thoughts, and disruption of our sexual normal development by creating a deep sense of shame about ourselves. I mean, think of an LGBTQ kid raised in that environment, and it forces people into the gender binary who don't want to be there, who don't belong there, who have their own life to live independent of this cultural construct. And it labels people like for being sex addicts. Listen to my talk on that one if you want to get more information. And last of our three, or second of our three, is the insula, the disgust pathway. I want to do a little experiment with you. Would you all look at another person, get a partner real quick, and label number one, number two. Number one, I want you to imagine you've got a nice big juicy apple, and look at the other person. I want you to look at him when you do this, and you're just having a nice conversation between the two of you. Look at the other person, you got the apple, and you're having a nice conversation. You bite into that apple, and you look at it, and there's a worm, only half a worm. Only half a worm is in that apple. Okay, what was the look you saw on the other person's face? Not the person with the apple, the other person. What was their look? What? Loud, say it really loud. What do you know? They didn't eat the apple. The person that had the apple was imaginary, and yet the person who didn't have the apple still had a disgusting look on their face. What is going on? Well, it's our disgust pathways. We have a very highly tuned disgust pathway in our brain. It does two things for us. It keeps us from eating poison or bad food, and it warns everybody else of poison or bad food. So that's why the other person had a disgusting look on their face for an imaginary apple that nobody bit into, and the worm is still okay. He hasn't gotten out of the apple yet. Isn't that interesting? Why do I talk about disgust? because it's so important in religion. Very, very important. Have you ever heard people say something like, sinners are sick and they need the healing power of Jesus? Or those dirty atheists, those filthy sex addicts, the disgusting homosexuals? Listen to the words that religionists use to describe people that don't adhere to their dogma. How often do they teach ideas about filth, disgust, behavior, disease, dirty, repulsive? I mean, the list could go on and on and on. But all of these words I just told you are related to the disgust pathway in our brains. So it equates disgust with religious ideas and moral ideas. This is really important. That's why when you watch Fox News and they're disgusted about all the homosexuals out there, they are intentionally stimulating the disgust pathway that will keep you in the grips of this ideological and religious idea that you were taught about how disgusting other outgroups are. And it's always the outgroup. Muslims think Christians are disgusting because they eat pork. That's disgusting to a Muslim. Most of you, I had bacon this morning, I would be disgusting to a practicing Muslim or even an Orthodox Jew. So there's a lot of taboos that come out of this training, and it all relates to the disgust pathways. I won't go into all this, but I'll just say that the disgust cycle applies to all things, especially sex. I am disgusted because I masturbate. I'm disgusted because you masturbate. I'm disgusted because you're a homosexual. I'm disgusted if I'm a homosexual. I'm disgusted with people who have kinks or engaged in the BDSM world. That's unnatural. That's disgusting. Even heterosexual behavior can be disgusting. I mean, how many of these Christians only have sex missionary style because everything else is disgusting? I mean, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the current House, he's never had sex outside a missionary position, I'm told. And the vast majority of these sexual activities are perfectly normal outside of religious indoctrination. Okay, we're going to call a quick break for our coffee, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how attachment plays into all this. Really important concept.
We're going to get to hear some more great music from Jack Summers. So before we get going with that, maybe this would be a good time to ask you if we want to come see you perform this December, what are you up to?
Yeah, I actually remember the dates this time. Last time I had no clue. But I'm playing December 15th at the Rhino and December 20th at the Mini Bar. Yeah?
Okay, and we can always follow you to keep up with where you're going, right? Yeah, okay, awesome. Thanks, Jack. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I promised a happier, a lighter song. This is a love song, but I wrote it for nobody in particular. At least I thought I did that, but I'll address the elephant in the room. I have been working out. But my workouts are with, I watch these YouTube videos, and this beautiful Northern Irish woman lifts weights, and I lift weights along with her. And anyway, a few months into this, I started writing this song, and I was like, I need a name. I'll just, Caroline works. Caroline's a good name. And it turns out the YouTube lady, her name's Caroline too. And I played this song, and I said, oh, this is a love song. It's not about anybody. And my sister was in the crowd, and she said, well, I think you wrote that love song about your workout lady. And I said, I probably did. And I'm in therapy, but we have other things to talk about. We'll talk about that later. Anyway. Let me take you dancing, darling, with my two left feet. Worries and police departments, things that we don't need. So if you'll be my Bonnie Parker, I can be your Clyde. Or maybe I'm a sideshow barker and you're passing by. Oh, I wanna be the architect of something beautiful, and make you feel the kind of love you only find inside of Broadway musicals. So darling, put your hand in mine, let me love you, Caroline. There's a bar on Armour Road where I drink for free. I don't think the owner knows, but he sure likes me. And maybe if you want some time, I could take you there. You could dance like Ginger Rogers, I'm no Fred Astaire. Oh, I wanna be the architect of something beautiful, and make you feel the kind of love you only find inside of Broadway musicals. Darling, put your hand in mine, let me love you, Caroline. Tell me what you're waiting for. Get your boots out on the floor. Let the music take your mind. And everything will be all right. All right. Just a shot of tonic water in my builder's gin. If you'll be the judge's daughter, I can be Huck Finn. And maybe somewhere down the line, someone else will say, if you'll be my Caroline, our love will find a way. Oh, I wanna be the architect of something beautiful, and make you feel the kind of love you only find inside of Broadway musicals. Maybe if the fates align, I could hold you, Caroline. 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 Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jack. That was great. Yeah. We'll be hearing one more time from Jack after we have our second part with Darrel. Before we get into that, there are two things I wanted to talk about. I might be redundant and you'll hear about it one more time, but I don't want to forget, so I'm going to tell you now. First, if you've been enjoying seeing Darrel today, you can see him in a totally new way in a couple of weeks. I just learned Darrel is like musical, okay? He's going to be our our musician in 2 weeks, and he's going to do the same thing, well, like a little different from Jack, of course, but we'll get to see his talents musically, which will be, I'm super excited, about this. The 17th at that gathering, you can come and hear Darrel, sing. That I'm excited. Also, at the end of today, we are going to need a couple extra volunteers to help with just sweeping and some things that need to get done. If you can help afterwards, we would love your human hands. So reach out to Joseph Kraft over here. We'd love your extra hands. Yeah? Okay, so let's get into the second part. I know I've been connecting so many ideas from what Darrel's been talking about today. So let's get into that second part. Thank you so much, Darrel. Dr. Darrel, yay!
Thank you. I got fixed. I got turned back on. All right. Good. What she didn't say is, I'm a hell of a lot more nervous about doing the music in a couple weeks than I am about doing this talk. I haven't sang in public in like 35 years, so this will be we'll all be regretting it in about 2 weeks. Okay, let's start off with some cute animals. Who doesn't like cute animals? These are little mountain voles, and they bond. They bond through a hormone called oxytocin that's in your brain too. Vasopressin and oxytocin are the bonding hormones, are very important in bonding. They're not the only thing. And so we know that bonding through this hormone helps a mother and a child come together as caregiver and child to bond and gain an attachment. Very important in primates, really important in humans, because we have such long childhoods before the child can be independent. So what's this got to do with our subject today? Well, our subject today would work better if the thing worked better. Any way to get this moving here? Where I can hit the button. Something worked. There we go. All right. So emotional attachment starts literally from the day you're born, and probably earlier than that even. I mean, there's studies that show that the child is even listening to the mother's heartbeat and things like that. But emotional attachment is very much involved in the emotional regulation. So you all have seen, if you've had children, you've been around children, you know, children at age 2 or so are going out into the world and adventuring a little bit. And then when they get scared, what do? They come back to mom or dad to get set in their lap, get a hug, get a kiss, and then they go back out adventuring again. That is emotional regulation. They get scared. They don't know how to deal with their emotions. They don't know how to deal with their fear. So they have to come back to mom to get emotionally regulated again. Very primitive thing. You see it in baby monkeys. This is not just humans. You see it in apes, baby monkeys, baby apes, baby humans. By the way, we're all apes. We all have those same tendencies because we need that attachment to stay safe in our environment. And mother makes us feel safe and gives us a sense of ownership and power within our environment as long as we're close to her. And then, of course, as we get older, more adventurous, learn more about how to manipulate our environment, we less need mother because we can emotionally regulate ourselves. So attachment systems are incredibly important for our species, but religion loves it because religion wants to take advantage of our attachment systems. And this is the new stuff. This is stuff I have never talked about, and I don't know many people that have talked about it. But think about this. Religion likes to take you and tell you, you should be more attached to Jesus than to your own parents. You should be more attached to God than to your own children. Am I not right? Paul talks about this. Jesus talks about this. If you love your parents more than me, then get out of here. I don't like you. There's a whole bunch of religious stuff that pushes this notion that God is more important to you than your own parents or of your own children. And so as a result of that, parents who are highly controlling and highly religious oftentimes use things like spanking, berating the child. For just being a normal child, you get berated because God doesn't appreciate you asking those dumb questions or being too adventurous or kissing a boy when you shouldn't be kissing boys or whatever. And the shame that comes out of religious indoctrination tends to interfere with the attachment between the parent and the child. How do you attach to a parent when the parent might beat you? How do you attach to a parent when the parent might be the one who berates you in public for normal childhood behavior? So if your caregiver gives you a cold response to something you need help with, I need emotional regulation from my parent, and yet my parent shoves me away, that means I have no way to emotionally regulate, have nowhere to go to gain security within this environment. At that moment is pretty damn scary. And to a 3, 4, or 5-year-old, that can have long-lasting effect if it's a persistent message coming from the caregiver. An arbitrary discipline. I mean, look at the way those homeschooling, child discipline people talk about how to train up a child. Have you seen any of that? The Duggar family, you know, no big deal. Beat your child with an appropriate rod so the officials can't prove you're abusing your child. How much does that interfere with the natural bond between the caregiver and the infant? So there's lots of religious teachings that come out that really impact attachment and how people create the bond that allows them to grow up with secure attachments and to become adults that know how to attach, know how to trust people, know how to manage their social environment. But if you're raised in an environment where spare the rod, spoil the child, where demons can possess children, there are countries in Africa, Christian countries in Africa now, that are telling people your child is demon possessed, you need to do something about it. Children are being killed in some countries in Africa because of this notion of demon possession. So disease is a result of evil. How many, in my own family, I have a horrible example of a mother in my family, I won't say anything more, had a child with a birth defect, and she thought it was because she had sex outside of marriage, and so she hated her own child for the rest of her life. She is now long dead. But that child is now carrying that on to her children. You can see the intergenerational trauma, and it comes from the notion of demon possession and disease coming from sin. She thought she sinned by having sex outside of marriage. The baby was conceived before they got married. And so for the rest of their life and her child's life. It's a horrible story within my own family. So I've seen this up close and personal. So I have this book, The Illusion of God's Presence, which I think really is one of the few books that tends to look at attachment theory and religion. One of the first books I've ever seen that actually gives a good summary of it. Where's David Rice? David Rice? Where's David? There he is back there. I have to blame him for turning me on to Jack Wathy's book. If you want a good book, it's a little bit thick. I won't bullshit you there. You have to pay attention, but it's got some really interesting ideas about bonding and attachment and why people have this sense of, I have a sense of God. I don't have any proof of God, but I sure feel Him in my heart. Why is that? What's going on there? It's a very common experience. Whether you're a Baptist or a Muslim, you still feel God in your heart, so to speak. So religion hijacks our attachment system. Think of these words, Jesus loves me. Is that an attachment message? I am safe in the love of God. Is that an attachment message where the child can come back and get comfort from a parent in a threatening environment? I am a child of God. Wow, another attachment message. Think of all these messages. How many of you have heard every one I've given you so far? Yeah, most of the people in here have had that message given to you. I belong to God. I belong to Jesus. He walks with me and talks with me. It's my favorite, one of my granny's favorite songs. I'm going to show you some more favorite songs later. Not 2 weeks down. I mean, I won't sing religious songs to you. He is my shepherd. Is that an attachment? I belong to a shepherd. I owe him everything. So all these are messages that directly impact and relate to our ability to attach. So look at this. This is religious artwork. And you see this kind of religious artwork everywhere. But if you contrast that with this, they look similar. Why is that an important piece of religious iconography? For the same reason that this behavior is important to our species. So what religion has done is said, we can use attachment systems to get you attached to the religion despite your attachment to your parents or to your children or whatever. So what it does, it leads to unhealthy attachment, a constant need for approval, because I want to stay attached to the people in my church. Constant conflict avoidance is all a part of an insecure attachment going on here. constant second guessing, needing parental and family approval in adulthood. Why do we need our family's approval when I'm a 30-year-old person with my own life to live? Why is that so important to us? It goes back to attachment, and probably attachment that's interfered with in some way with religion. Some people will leave their parents to be more consistent with their religion or follow their religion's indoctrination. And of course, the shame of asserting yourself, asserting your own agency and saying, "Here's just who I am," regardless of who you want me to be. I have an article you might, if you're interested, go online and look in our resources at Recover from Religion. It's an article I wrote called "Whose Pain Is It?" Whose pain is it? Really easy, just Google that and you'll come up. It's an article that shows how people are captivated by the pain. You know, your mom says, "Well, if you become an atheist, it'll hurt me so bad." Well, whose life is this? Is it hers or is it yours? And why do you want to take responsibility for her pain? Where did that pain come from? It didn't come from you. It came from her expectations about you. You still have a life of your own. You still have agency. And of course, fear of abandonment. There's a lot of abandonment issues that come out of religious training as well. So attachment to Jesus or Allah, God, church, a lot of that stuff happens that supersedes attachment to your own spouse or to your own parents, as we mentioned. So there's 3 pathways, and we've already talked about all 3 of them, and that is religion, especially patriarchal religions, tend to interfere with our limbic system, our disgust system, and our attachment system. So just put those 3 in your head and memorize those. You'll be good. You'll remember everything else I said here today. So here's the interesting thing. If you are in a learning situation, all 3 of those systems are involved to some degree in learning. You cannot learn something effectively if you're not engaging at least 2 and oftentimes all 3 of those systems. And by learning, I don't mean learning in a school situation. I mean just learning who's dangerous, who's not, who can I trust, who can I not trust, those kinds of things. That's learning too. And all 3 of those pieces are involved. At Recovering from Religion, 90% of our calls come from these 3 areas. Fear of hell. And which system is that involved with? Yeah, limbic system. Sexual shame and dysfunction. That's related to disgust, isn't it? And third, fear of isolation, resulting in the loss of attachment. Those are the things. I'm going to lose my family if I come out to them. That's an attachment issue. I wake up with night terrors about hell. That's a limbic system issue. I can't admit I'm gay. I can't admit I like to watch porn, and I feel disgusted at myself for that. So all these things, you can see the behavior that I've mentioned here, each one of them can almost be attached to one of these 3 systems. Now, this is oversimplifying it, I'll agree, but all 3 systems are involved, so they interweave. We can't separate totally, but if you can just look at these 3 things, I think you'll all agree that we are seeing the evidence right here in front of us of what that these 3 pieces are doing in our brain. Now I'm going to talk about something else, and that's why is it so damn hard to leave religion? And I call this detachment anxiety. Many people seem to be able to function psychologically pretty well within the confines of religion, even though they may not believe any of it, even though they're just going through the motions. But when they leave the religion and they lose their whole family, they lose social contact, they lose their social group, they lose their worldview, that can be fucking traumatizing. And I mean that in every sense you can think of. People lose all that, and they lose it real quickly. And that can cause, think about if a bomb fell and killed all your closest friends and your family. How would you feel? And that's what happens to a Jehovah's Witness when they leave. That's what happened to some Catholics when they leave. Everybody leaves them, and they have this grief response, which is a pretty normal response. Anybody who lost all these things at once would have a grief and loss response. But it has a profound effect, so much that it can actually cause what we now know as religious trauma. A lot of religious people say to those who left, well, you're miserable and you're depressed because you left Jesus. No, I'm miserable because all the rest of you guys shunned me when I left the indoctrination. I thought you were my friends. Now I realize you weren't my friends. You were just here to keep me in the religion. Does this sound familiar to some of you? It's pretty common strategy for most religions. So this detachment anxiety comes from an inability to the attachment in unhealthy relationships. In this case, an unhealthy relationship to the church. And so I hear people saying, I left church, but I still feel like I want to go back. Why do I want to go back? Because I'm unhealthily attached to that organization. Or fear of abandonment. I want to go back because I feel so lonely. I feel abandoned. Of course you're abandoned. You're abandoned by everybody you thought was your friends. And of course, detaching from an abusive family. How many times do we see people leaving abusive relationships and then being drawn right back into them in some way, shape, or form? It's a common thing I see clinically and have for years. So here's the deal. Parts of your brain don't talk to each other. I know there's no such thing as hell, but I still wake up with a fear of hell. I know I shouldn't go back to church, but I still feel a strong desire to return. Why do I want to be with my toxic religious parents? What's going on there? And why do I miss my church meetings? All of those have something to do with the attachment system in our brain. So it's a detachment warning when your brain says, don't leave the church, don't leave the church. It's warning you of a dangerous thing, a loss of all your community, a loss of all your friends, a loss of your family, your parents, your children, whatever. It's a legitimate fear with respect to your brain. There's no lion going to get you, but there's a whole lot of other stuff going to get you. So I call this is kind of Darrel spitballing psychology here. If you want to argue with me, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. I'm open to changing words here, but I'm calling it detachment anxiety, and I'm saying it's acute when I have a panic attack. And I've had people say, I don't believe in any of this more, but I just can't. I have a panic attack every time I think about leaving the church. I see that as a manifestation of this detachment anxiety. I would lose everything. I know I would lose everything if I left. Or chronic detachment anxiety is when I feel lonely. I left the church a long time ago. I still feel lonely. I can't reconnect. And a lot of us in here are here right now today because we're trying to find a way to reconnect and recreate that community that we lost when we left church. So our system, our brain, our limbic system, our attachment system, we're all saying, go back, go back, go back. And you're getting this cortisol bath in your body that's saying danger, danger, danger. And so it creates a lot of hormonal stress within us. And we don't know how to handle that. We don't know how to emotionally regulate. So we oftentimes go into depression or have some other psychological symptom that comes out of that. And if you're responding to religion as the caregiver, you often say, well, Jesus is watching you. Jesus is your good shepherd. You need to come back because you can rest in Jesus. You get all these attachment messages when you leave religion. You would be much better off if you came back. Even if you don't believe, just come back. Well, that tells you it had nothing to do with theology. It has to do with programming your brain. So it's telling you to get back to safety, get back to church, go back to some kind of community. And some people do that, but other people come to Oasis. So that's the good thing. Thanks for coming. So religion attachment, I'm going to talk about religious attachment through the lens of cultural trauma. How do millions of people sing with gusto and joy about their own subjugation, about their abusers, redeemers, power, and glory, about their own worthlessness and insignificance? I'm going to show you some slides real quickly. See if you've ever sang these songs. You ever sang this song? What does it say? I'm a worthless piece of shit, right? That's what that song says. Or how about this one? Jesus loves me. I am weak, but my abuser is strong. Or trust and obey. That was one of my granny's favorite songs. Trust and obey my abuser. And that's what it's saying. The Lord is my salvation from the hell he created for me. That's what my Lord is my salvation. I'm just a worthless, willful child of my master. This whole slave mentality is very common, of course, if you're a Christian. So how do people sing such horrible songs except through the lens of intergenerational trauma. Look at this. How many generations have sung those songs? And I know evangelical Christians are making up a whole bunch of new songs, but they're all still filled with this same horrible psychological message of learned helplessness, and you're worthless, and you're going to hell if you don't follow our particular brand, of course, of evangelicalism. Now, here's the interesting thing. Just as an abused child sees the abuse of their caregiver as normal, so does the religious person see the abuse of their deity and their religious leaders as normal. It feels normal to be abused if you're an abused child or if you're abused in an abusive religious system. That is why people want to go back to it. I've seen this over and over again. Some of you who are therapists in here, and I could point out a few of you, we all, if you're a therapist, you've seen this. You've seen somebody remarry the same kind of abuser 2 or 3 or 4 times. A person who was married to an alcoholic, they get divorced because they're an alcoholic, an abuser, treated them terribly, and then 2 years later they're married to another one. What's going on here? It's that attachment piece. There's a lot of good theory around attachment theory in psychological terms, but I'm suggesting it's got a religious component because I see people do the same thing for religion. Some people leave the Baptist religion and go right into Pentecostalism. Some people leave Mormonism and go into Pentecostalism or Seventh-day Adventist or something. They start church hopping, and I see it'll happen about 3, maybe 4 times before they finally realize, oh, it's all bullshit. So, but it takes a while. Now, I'm not blaming anybody because I did it too. I went through 3 iterations before I finally figured it out. But once you figure it out, you realize, now what do I do? Your brain has kind of deprogrammed itself through those series of church hoppings. Oftentimes it's church hopping from a controlling religion to a less controlling, to a less more liberal, and then finally out altogether. So let's contextualize this. Trauma in a person, decontextualized over time, looks like personality. Trauma in a family, decontextualized over time, looks like family traits. Trauma in a people, decontextualized over time, looks like religious culture. Now, I added the word religious in there. The author, Resma Menachem, did not put that in there. I put it in there. But it's the same thing. Do you think there are, I won't ask you, I think entire cultures have been traumatized by religious indoctrination. Look at that music up there I gave you just a few minutes ago. How horrible are those psychological messages? And if those messages have figuratively and sometimes literally been beaten into you from the time your brain was open to learning about your environment and from your caregiver, you could have real issues trying to deal with these ideas and ideology later in life. I would suggest that we see evidence, most of us would agree from an outsider's perspective, that a woman in Saudi Arabia who has to wear an all-black chador out in public anytime she leaves her house, is it possible she's been traumatized? Is it possible that she has a lifelong trauma related to the religious indoctrination and what she's required to do within that particular culture? Is it possible that an entire culture of Judaism has been traumatized by the Holocaust? Is it possible we're seeing today, right now as we watch, an Islamic culture that's traumatized and a Israeli culture that's traumatized, and they're expressing their trauma in war, even as we watch here right now? I think there's a lot of potential there. And that's not what I'm here primarily to talk about today. I'm mainly interested in you as a human being, but I can see this culturally playing out as well. So when your body gets stuck in your limbic system, fear, when you feel disgust and it impairs your self-discovery, how do you discover yourself as a sexual human being if you're disgusted by your own body, by your own thoughts? If attachments are being disrupted by the religion, you can't be rational about what's going on in your environment, and you can't grow and develop and become a more full human being. Everything I've talked about here today inhibits the enjoyment of life. And most people tell me, even though it was really difficult to leave whatever religion I was raised in, I feel a lot freer. I have more choices in life. I don't have to worry about what people think of me. I'm not as conflict avoidant, for example. I feel liberated from the restrictions and expectations of my parents raised me with. There's a lot of things that come out. But you may not know you experienced trauma, and I'm not saying everybody in here has. That is not my message. But you do know somebody who has, and that trauma probably could have been related to religion. So here's the problem. Trauma related to behavior causes problems for you and probably other people. It often interferes with enjoying life, having close friends, enjoying travel to new places, or learning new things. It can interfere with those perfectly normal things. And so that's why I'm talking to you here today. I want you to have a fuller life. I want you to be more free, able to express yourself, whoever you are, whoever you want to be. And I think there's a lot of hope out there. There's been really good research just in the last 15 years on how to deal with trauma. And we know that neural networks can be reprogrammed, and the brain is surprisingly beautifully plastic. It may be hard to change, but we know change is possible. And we know from a good deal of research that the brain literally has neural pathways that we can see with MRIs. We can see the brain responding to certain stimuli, and we know that certain traumas have certain patterns. The more we understand how the brain works through just imaging, the more we realize this stuff can be changed. We can make a difference here. Now, this all came out of the Iran-Iraq war, Second War, when soldiers started coming back. You remember in World War I, soldiers came back from World War I with what's called shell shock. And then soldiers came back from World War II with what's called battle fatigue. And they had names for this stuff. And when men came back from Vietnam with these behavioral things that they lived the rest of their life homeless or whatever, the U.S. government finally got the idea and said, maybe we should understand what this is. Maybe we should take this shit serious. And it was fortunate that at about the same time, brain scanning and other imaging methodologies had matured, so by the mid-2000s, we could look inside the brain and see if there's any indications that we could help understand trauma. And so the government put a lot of money into this at that time, and over the next 5 or 10 years, developed a lot of diagnostic criteria and understanding and treatment. So now we know that trauma can be treated. And there's a whole lot of things I can't talk about here today. I don't have time. But, excuse me. If you or you know somebody who's suffering with this, go see a therapist. Go find somebody that can help you understand what it is you have experienced and how you can create new pathways. I call it pathways in the grass. You have certain pathways that have been developed in your brain, and those pathways are strong and they're hard to change. But if you imagine the mailman walking across your yard every day to put mail in the mailbox, then there will be a well-worn path right where the mailman walks. If you change the mailbox, though, put it in a different place, the mailman's going to go a different way. So a different path will be made, and the old path will slowly but surely regrow. And that's what we do with therapy with respect to trauma. We help people reprogram those pathways, find new pathways for their brain to go. Because right now your brain automatically goes into shame mode, or automatically goes into conflict avoidance, or automatically goes into I apologize right now, but I haven't done anything wrong. That's an automatic response. But we can help you reprogram your brain. So what I hope for you today, I hope this talk has given you a little bit of insight. And if you need help, go find a group. We have a Recovering from Religion. We have online groups and we have in-person groups that you can join, and you can talk about this stuff. And we also, if you'll look at my table back there at Recovering from Religion outside, There's a brochure on Secular Therapy Project. If you need a good therapist, and by the way, Fred is one of our therapists right there, sitting right here. He's in the Secular Therapy Project. You can find a good therapist right here in Kansas City that is approved by us and who knows what religious trauma is and is not afraid of it. Too many therapists and psychiatrists, as I said right at the beginning of my talk, psychology is scared shitless of criticizing religion. I am not. I think religion should be criticized severely because it causes so many problems. And so we know that the therapists that come to us, we certify them, and we know that they will be able to help you. If you are interested in any of my books today, just go back there and talk to Barb back there, and they can help you. And I'll sign any books that you get today. And I hope you'll take a minute and go online and look at Recovering from Religion, because we deal with this shit every day. Lots and lots of people come to us with the trauma that I expressed here today, and we try to help people find resources for dealing with some of the issues, like how do I tell my parents? How do I deal with the fact that my whole family shunned me and stuff like that? All right, that is it. Thank you, folks. I don't know what our time is, but if we got time, I'll take questions. If we don't, I'll shut up.
We can take a few, yeah? Great. Your question?
Would you say that one of the worst things about trauma is that oftentimes you don't even realize that you're traumatized?
Yeah, as I said earlier, it feels normal to you, those responses, but why do you have those responses? Sometimes the best thing to do is listen to your environment. If people are saying, why'd you respond so angrily to that? It might be a hint that your trauma response is coming out rather than a normal response. Remember, I had that picture of the tree distorted. Many people go through life with very distorted perceptions of reality, and they don't even know it because it feels normal to them. You're absolutely right. I will totally agree. Amber, yes. Autumn. Autumn's got a question here. Got a microphone? Where'd the microphone go? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have?
Yeah, Lindsay was going to ask a question too, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, we'll get all three. Yeah.
Isn't spare the rod, spoil the child actually about like guiding your kids? You know, rod.
Hold the microphone up. I can't hear you.
Isn't spare the rod, spoil the child about guiding your kids? You know, the rod is like a shepherd's rod or whatever, instead of like, and then it's not about like beating them.
Well, my Christian friends and the books about child rearing all take that literally. They take that spare the rod, spoil the child out of the Old Testament very literally. And they even talk about what size the rod should be. So, no, they take it very literally. It's not figurative. It's not guidance. There's much better psychological ways to guide a child than to beat the child. That's, anyway.
Okay,
one more back there, and then I got to... Okay, Lindsay?
Could we go back to that last slide with Recovering from Religion's information while you're taking the rest of your questions? Please and thank you.
That one?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we're going to finish with questions just because it's been a longer presentation. So maybe near the end they can come and talk to you over at the desk or
I will
at the
be out
table.
there. I'll be glad to talk to people.
Fabulous.
Thank
you,
you.
Darrel, so
Okay.
much. Okay, so one more song from Jack. Thanks so much for being with us. Is this going to be a happy song?
It depends. We can laugh. Well, we will laugh at the end. I can guarantee you. So we're entering the season where we all see our families. And it's the season of the Midwestern goodbye around here. Do you guys know what Midwestern goodbyes are? For those of you who don't know, a Midwestern goodbye is the opposite of an Irish goodbye. So a goodbye that takes just a little bit too long. And over Thanksgiving, I saw my mom, and as I was leaving her house, I was like, I got to go back to the city. She said, do you want to do a load of laundry before you go? And I was like, no, I don't think I have 2 hours, so I will see. But it's because they love you. That's why they try and keep you around. This song's called Midwestern Goodbyes. That e-cigarette in your mobile phone, things that you can't leave behind when you go. And if it weren't for work and the weekends, you swear that you could throw them away and just say goodbye for good. Well, sometimes you smile when it's over, but darling, it don't hurt to cry. Just know when you're singing a swan song and when it's a lullaby, and just let go. All we get is time, and life's too short for Midwestern goodbyes. That Honda Accord, made in 2003, that you ran off K10 right into an elm tree. You took your senior pictures perched up on that hood. Can still see 'em tow it away as you say goodbye for good. Well, the glory days don't last forever, but the bad times go away too. See the dogwoods drop leaves in the winter and wait for the redbuds to bloom, and just let go. All we get is time, and life's too short for Midwestern goodbyes. That box that I keep stashed under my bed, filled with some letters that you've never read. I once tried to burn them, but they're like a stump of green wood. Still, someday I pray that I'll say goodbye for good. They say broken hearts take a bit longer. We'll know when the moment is right. You left me there at the altar, and then we went out the next Saturday night. And we'll let go. It's okay to take this slow. We've got time for Midwestern goodbye, and we'll let go. All things heal in time, and I guess love is a Midwestern goodbye. Is a Midwestern goodbye. Oh, I best get going. It's a Midwestern goodbye. Okay, one more beer. It's a Midwestern goodbye. Do you want to do a load of laundry? It's a Midwestern goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jack. We're glad to have you here. Yeah, and yeah, will you come back sometime and play some more for us?
Of course, I love it here.
We won't make you stay a little longer, though. Okay, awesome. Okay, so, let's see. All right, are we? Oh, yay, great. Okay, so before we finish up, a few more things about Oasis, right? You are always welcome to donate, right? We are a 401c3 organization, so you're welcome to go to our website and make a donation, or you can do monthly, you can do once in a while, whatever feels good to you if you'd like to support us. Also, every Monday, right, Micah Ministry serves hundreds of people a meal every Monday evening from 5:15 to 7:15. They help anyone, regardless of race, gender, religious, or non-religious affiliation, sex, sexual orientation, or any other trait. Come join us in helping our less fortunate neighbors. So many of us go on Mondays or when we can, so this is a great time to help our community all over KCOAs, or all over KC. So make sure that you check our site too for Micah Ministries. Okay, and that's it for today. So thanks everybody for coming.
I look at what's in front of me.